So to begin this square, I like to start with a chain 4, and I have a few tricks that I'm going to be showing you as I make this square that I think make it even just a little bit better than crocheting maybe the more standard way. So instead of making a slip knot, I'm actually just going to go ahead and flip my yarn over like this as if it were a slip knot, slip my hook in from behind, and you see how I'm just sort of holding a loop there on my hook. I'm going to use this for the loop on my hook instead of slip knotting it. By not putting the knot in there, it'll just make a little bit more of a smooth ring. I don't want to start with a magic circle because I'm not going to close up this center all the way, so I do want to have an open ring in the middle. So with this on my hook, I'm going to go ahead and chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I'm going to slip stitch in the first chain I made, that loop that was on our hook, to form a ring. So since I don't have the knot, this is a sort of wobbly loop, so I'm just going to go under this very top loop right here, like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch, and you can see I've made a ring. And that ring right there, let me try and put my finger through it so it's a little easier to see, that's where I'm going to be working round 1. Now to begin round 1 itself, you can start with a chain 3 as a double crochet, but I like to use something called a chainless starting double crochet. Let me show you how that's done. I'm going to hold my hook steady and twist it around the yarn like so, so that essentially I've used that tall loop to create the yarn over. Then I'm going to insert my hook into that ring in the center, like so, and pull up a loop. Now you can see I'm keeping my finger on that first loop to hold everything very, very steady. So it looks like I've got 3 loops on my hook like you normally do to make a double crochet. So I'll yarn over, pull through 2, which is really just behind that 1, then yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that's where it's safe to let go of that loop. And you can see that that makes something that looks a lot more like a double crochet. So if you need to rewind and watch that a few more times, that's fine. If you can't get the hang of it or don't like it, you can just use a chain 3 instead. So from here, we're just going to work some standard stitches to make row 1. I'm going to yarn over and work back into that ring and make 2 more double crochets. This first round is actually very similar to what you'd make to start a standard granny square. So I've got 2 double crochets in that ring, then I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and work 3 more double crochets in that ring. And I'm going to do this 3 times so that at the end we'll have 4 double crochets, or excuse me, 4 sets of 3, so 12 double crochets all worked into that ring in the center. So there's another set of 3. So we'll chain 2 again, 1 and 2. Then we'll make 3 more right back into that ring. Let's see, I think I'm almost done with round 1. There we are. You can see I have 4 sets of 3 double crochets, so I just need 1 more chain 2 before I join to finish this round. I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm just going to slip stitch right in the top of that chainless starting double crochet. Chainless standing double crochet. There we are. Okay, and we've got our 12 double crochets for round 1. Now, normally when you're working in the round like this, you might just continue working in this direction, but I'm going to tell you the secret about squares like this. When you keep working in one direction like this, you may have noticed that your square starts to get a bias or a sort of turn to it. And the way to fix this is to actually go working back in the other direction. If you keep working in the same direction, the lean of the stitches themselves will cause your square to become biased in sort of a slanty direction and sort of look twisted. So by turning each round, we're going to keep some really nice straight rows. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn to work back the other direction, and I'm going to be making double crochets again. So I'm going to start with another chainless one. So I'm going to pull up tall, pull down the top, go around, and go right into that chain 2 space. Pull up my loop and make my double crochet, like so. Then in this corner 2 space, to finish it off and make a new corner, I'm going to work another double crochet, pull up some more yarn from my skein here, there we are, and then I will chain 2 and work 2 more double crochets right back in that chain 2 space. And that's going to be our standard corners here for block 1. 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. Then to get to the next corner, I'm going to just work a double crochet in each of those stitches. So we have 1 and 2 and 3, and then of course I'm back at a chain 2 space, so we work another corner, which is 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, followed by a chain 2, and with a little bit more yarn I can make 2 more double crochets. And then I'm just going to continue working this round all the way around like that, with a double crochet in each stitch, and 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in each corner. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm making a square blanket like this with lots of squares, and I want to make sure that each one of those squares ends up facing up or facing the right direction. Although this one's pretty reversible, it does have a right side. So what I like to do is actually leave these center tails unwoven in until the very end right here, and that way I always know what's the back of my square. So that's just a little tip. Normally I like weaving in my ends as I go, but by leaving them hanging off the back, you'll always know which side is the back side of your square. Makes it a little easier when it comes time for assembly. So we're almost all the way around row 2, just working our double crochets in each double crochet stitch. Get that end out of the way for now. And this is essentially how the entire block 1 is made until you get to the outer 2 rows. So like I said, you're going to make 4 of these that begin with your color A. Oops, didn't finish my double crochet there. You'll make 3 of these that begin with your color B, and 3 of these that begin with your color C. Or if you're doing this as a stash buster, you can make each one different too. Totally up to you. A little bit more yarn here. And this is the trick when you do turned rounds. You want to make sure that you get a stitch worked for each stitch, and of course in the corners. So if you need to, you can count your stitches on this row to make sure you get one in that very last stitch and that it doesn't get missed. From there, of course, I just joined the last stitch and our first stitch together here with a slip stitch, and that's the end of round 2. So that's what I'm going to keep doing all the way through round 7. So let me grab my square that's almost done with round 7. All right, so here we are at the end of round 7. I've turned at the end of every row or round, and I've got my square ready for the last 2 rounds. So what I've done here is I wanted to stop and show you how I finish off my squares. I think it gives it a really nice finished look, but it's a little bit, I don't want to say more complicated. It's not really harder than slip stitching, but it's a little trick that I like to use. So what I'm going to do before I slip stitch to finish off this last round, I'm going to go ahead and cut the yarn, and I want to leave a good 6 inches because that's what I want to weave in. I like to weave in my ends really securely. From there, I'm going to go ahead and pull up on this loop so that this end comes right on out the top of the stitch, like so. Then I'm going to use a yarn needle, whichever style you prefer, and by threading that end right on my yarn needle, what I'm going to do is go into the second stitch of the round, not that first one, the chainless one, but the first real double crochet. I'm going to go under both of those top 2 loops with my needle, like so. Pull that on through, and then I'm going to send the needle right down the center. You see that's where the yarn's coming out. I want to send it right back down into that space, like so. And it helps to just sort of flip it over, maybe go under a couple loops there to help hold it secure, and pull that on through. Then from there, I like to take the needle and go through the top of the stitch that I skipped under those 2 loops right there and pull it through. And when I pull that just so, it creates a little V right on top of that first stitch we made. So I've duplicated the top of it right there. So I haven't added any stitches by doing this like you do when you do a slip stitch. When you slip stitch, it creates that little slip stitch itself that you need to remember to skip. With this, you don't have to remember to skip anything, and you don't have a lump from a knot. So from there, I would go ahead and weave in that end just as I normally would. I'm just going to send it under a couple right now to tack it down so it's out of my way. And then we're going to move on to round 8. Now, round 8 is very, very simple. It's just what you've been doing up to now, but we're going to do it in a different color. So this is color D. For this one, I used white, very simple. And what I'm going to do is join with a double crochet. Now, you could just join with a slip stitch and chain 3 again. This is just another way to avoid the chain 3 start. Because it can look a little different than the other stitches, a lot of people notice it, it tends to stick out, and this is a way around that. What I'm going to do is hold the end of my yarn in the unused fingers of my hook hand. When I'm crocheting, I don't use those 2 fingers. So I'm just going to use that to hold down the yarn. Then I'm going to yarn over twice on my hook, like so. And then I'm just going to pick a stitch. For this round, it doesn't matter a bit which one. So I'll go ahead and go under one of the stitches, yarn over, and still holding on to that end, I'm going to make a double crochet. Now, I want to hold on to that end right there for just one more stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and make a regular double crochet in the next one. And with that, I know that end is secure. I can go ahead and let go and weave it in later. So from there, I just repeat the previous rounds. Go ahead and double crochet in each stitch across, and then work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in each corner, chain 2 space. So you can see I've almost to the corner on this one. We'll just go ahead and work that corner together and then take a look at how it's coming together here. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets right in that chain 2 space, like so. So let me put that down. You can see that joining that yarn that way, we don't get that chain 3, and it looks just like a standard double crochet, so that's going to be great when we get all the way around. And of course then I'll finish this at round off the same way, by cutting the yarn and sewing it into the second stitch. So let me set this aside and come back when we've got this round done so I can show you the last round of this block. Alright, so here we are at the end of row 8. I've just worked just as before, but from the right side. After row 7, we don't turn. We just work row 8 right from the right side, and we stay on this side for the rest of this square. But there's only one more row to go. So what I'm going to do is pick up color E. In this case, I'm using green. I like to think of this as sort of the bushes in between my little plots of garden. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this with a half double crochet. Now, if you'd prefer, you can just join with a slip stitch, chain 1, and then make your half double crochet in the first stitch. It's up to you. But what I'm going to do is start with my slip stitch right on my hook, almost as if I was just starting with this all by itself. Then I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to go into a corner chain 2 space, and I'm going to make a half double crochet. Like so. There we go. All right, 1 half double crochet made. Now I need to make 4 more in that same chain 2 space. So in each of these chain 2 corners, we're going to be working 5 half double crochets. So that's 4 and 1 more. Now I'm going to work across this row right here. First, I'm going to make 12 half double crochets, 1 in each of the next 12 stitches. So there's 1, and don't miss this one. It's really easy to miss that first stitch after a corner. It wants to try and hide under the stitches that are in the corner. So be sure to keep an eye out for that one. So there's 2, 3, 4, 1 more. Now, for this 12th one, I don't want to quite finish it. I've got the 3 loops on my hook, and normally I would just yarn over and pull through to finish this stitch. But instead, I'm going to finish this stitch with color D. I'm going to go back to the white. Let me find the end here. It's going to be a little fiddly. Just take your time, get that over the hook, and use that to pull through that half double crochet. Now you can see it got pulled up and loose, not a big deal. Let me pull that out of the way, flip it over, and I'm just going to tug down a little bit on those 2 ends, like so, and that will close it back up. When I weave in those ends, I can adjust them a little bit too. Now, continuing with the white color, I'm going to work in the next 7 stitches with the white, but I want to have the green waiting for me when I get to the other side. So when I go into the next stitch, I'm going to make sure that I crochet over, let me pull it up alone here, there we go, that I crochet right over that green. I want to hold it behind the row I'm crocheting into as I make my half double crochets, so that's hidden behind those stitches. Now it won't be hidden perfectly, but it'll be mostly hidden, and it will be right there waiting for us on the other side. Now, if I didn't want that, if I wanted a really, really clean look without any green peeking through, what I could do is cut the green and rejoin it on the other side, like I'm going to do with the white. but that adds twice as many ends to weave in, so I decided not to do it. If you really hate weaving in ends, you can also then work over the white when you make the green until you need the white again. So let me see how many white stitches I've made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6. You can see the green is mostly hidden back there. If you look real close, you can see it peeking through, but that's okay. When I make the 7th one, I'm going to yarn over and go into that stitch and pull up my loop, but then I'm going to drop the white and pick up the green again and finish that 7th stitch with the green. So if you count by the top V's, we've got 7 white stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but we're ready to go with the green again. So I like to crochet over that white end just with 1 or 2 stitches to help tack it down, and then continue on to the corner with the green. Now, because I'm not crocheting over the white the whole way around, I will need to cut it and rejoin it when I get to the next side. But for now, I'm just going to keep crocheting all the way to that corner 2 space again. Now, it should take 12 more stitches to get to the corner. So we've got 12 green, 7 white, followed by 12 green, and then the corners on either end. So it's always a good idea to go back and count your stitches to make sure you're on track and that you didn't miss one somewhere, or add one. Easy enough to do either one. So let's count our green again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I know I'm on the right track. Now from there, it's just the same thing on the next side. In the chain 2 space, I'll work 5 half double crochets, followed by 12 green stitches, followed by 7 white stitches, then 7 more green stitches, and then I'm back at the corner again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put one more, oops, one more in that corner. My green's creeping up on me there. Say, stand back for a minute. There we go. All right, so you can see this square's a little wobbly too. I've made just this first side. I'm going to continue doing that on each of the 4 sides, but after I've got this round done, what I want to do is block the square, and that's something you'll want to do with all your squares, ideally before you join them up. So that will help it really stretch out. Each one of these squares after that 9th round should be 12 by 12. So that's your blocking goal. You can stretch it out a little bit if needed. For blocking it, I like to get it wet and then pin it out or use a blocking board and just let it air dry. If you prefer, you can use a hot steam iron, but don't touch the iron to the yarn itself. That will make it melt. So we don't want to do that. Just a little bit of hot steam will help the yarn relax. Not enough to melt it, just enough to let it lay flat and keep its shape. So that's block 1. Let's move on to block number 2.